Welcome to Life Recovery Today with Stephen Arterburn. In the next half hour, you'll obtain insights and tools to transform your life using the biblical principles found in the 12-step program. We believe everyone can benefit from a life recovery experience because we all have struggles in life. Struggles with addictions, food, depression, anxiety, and relationships, to name a few. You'll be encouraged to see how others have found a new way of life with hope for the future through life recovery. Your host is Steve Arterburn, founder of New Life Ministries and Women of Faith, author of over 100 books, and teaching pastor at Northview Church in Carmel, Indiana, one of the 20 largest churches in America. Steve is the co-editor of the Life Recovery Bible, the #1 selling recovery Bible. With over 3 million copies sold, this is the Bible given to inmates by Prison Fellowship and the Pew Bible for the Salvation Army. Now here's Steve.
Hi, Steve Arterburn here, and thanks for joining me for Life Recovery Today. You know, one of the things that I love to talk about are recovery principles and steps, but there are some gifts of recovery, and we wrote a book, Dave Stoop and myself, The 12 Gifts of Life Recovery. And one of those fantastic gifts is the gift of wisdom. You know, that's what I love about the steps. If you just go and work and get some insight and implement those steps, you are going to walk a very wise path. And guess what? That's not going to be enough. When we look back in the Bible, some people say, you know, I can't believe that David was characterized as a man after God's own heart, and yet he went and had that affair thing. And then we think about Solomon and just what a brilliant and wise man that he was. But when you get into the story, David was a man of recovery. He messed up just like a lot of us do, but he got back in there. He grieved, he repented, and he never ever lost his faith in God. Whether he was right or not, he knew God was always right. Then he has a little boy named Solomon who did this wonderful thing of asking for wisdom. And we all know the story of the non-baby splitting apart thing where the baby was saved. Such wisdom. And yet Solomon, maybe, I don't know, maybe the world's first incredible sex addict, having 700 wives and 300 concubines. What was that all about? I don't know. But here's the thing. God said, don't marry any of these people in this land because they're going to mess you up. And sure enough, you look at the end of Solomon's life, and what does it say? It said they turned him away from God. The world's wisest man with poor influence turns against the God who gave him all that wisdom. It says he wasn't like his father who loved and followed God till the very end of his life. So what am I saying? Well, there's a reason we have support groups, sponsors, accountability people, because you can be the wisest person in the world. If you don't have the right influence in your life, there's a good chance that wisdom isn't going to do you much good. So we want to live well, live strong, and finish well. And we're going to do that with wisdom and being smart enough, wise enough to surround ourselves with really good people. Now, when we come back, we're going to have one of my favorite people, Steve Poe. He is the author of a brand new book, Creatures of Habit. We're going to talk about these habits, some of the habits that lie beneath the habits that all of us are familiar with. We'll be back right after this.
Are you going through your struggles alone? Do you want someone to talk to help you through your pain? Do you feel like a failure when you relapse again, telling yourself, next time will be different? Don't walk this path alone anymore. Join a life recovery group today and be a person that your friends and family can be proud of. God created us to be in community, and we believe everyone can benefit from a life recovery experience. There are life recovery groups all over the country, and if there isn't one in your area, we can help you start one. Life Recovery brings recovery to you, right where you are. You'll take a journey with others to find healing and freedom. Whether you're looking to join a group or start one, New Life Ministries is here for you. Call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE or visit liferecoverytoday.net.
Welcome back to Life Recovery Today. One of the greatest joys in my life is to be a teaching pastor at this amazing church in Carmel, Northview Church. And I've got the guy he's the senior pastor. Steve, you've been there
21 years.
21 years. And when you got there, how many campuses were there 21 years ago? One campus. And now 12 campuses.
Yep.
But the 12 campuses, that's a big deal. But the bigger deal, the thing that people are always asking me about when I go somewhere, 4 of them in Indiana state prisons.
Yeah, 1 of them in a women's prison and 3 of them in men's.
Yeah. Well, I remember when we did the series on Take Your Life Back, and we took all the books out and passed them out to folks. I think we had over, the congregation bought over 3,000 books for prisoners and the guards and everybody. But when you walked in and you addressed them, you were like a rock star to them. and it was so great because, other people come out and bring a basket of food or something like that, but we have a church. We have a campus, people dedicated to it. And I just think that expresses your heart for people that struggle, because you don't add 4 prison campuses to increase tithes and offerings. You might get cartons of cigarettes in the offering plate or something like that. But man, it's just so wonderful to be with you and to talk about your new book. Steve's got a brand new book, Creatures of Habit. And what I love about this book, well, it's not just about, eating, drinking, smoking, but this is about some of these habits underneath, and I want to talk about that. One of the quotes is from Aristotle, and it says this: "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, it's an act and it's a habit. Now, that's Aristotle, and I think a lot of people have been given these great gifts of excellence, but they've got these habits underneath, and it's destroying their gift. What inspired you to do the series that became this book? What was it that caused you to go deeper into these habits?
Well, because I struggle with habits.
Yeah.
Everybody struggles with hurts, habits, and hang-ups.
Right.
And we pretty much are made up of the choices and the habits of our life. Pretty much is who we are. That becomes our identity, or how people know us, or how people recognize us. And it just felt like to me, Steve, that a lot of people were being kept from God's best in their life because they weren't dealing with the habits. They didn't think it was that big of a deal, or maybe didn't understand it was a habit, and they weren't dealing with them. And so I just felt like I really needed to address it in a sermon series, some specific areas. All these areas, there's 12 chapters, and so there's 12 areas that I personally struggled with. That's how I picked them.
Yeah. Well, and I love it that you addressed anger, because I think, especially with us men, anger is something that we have. A lot of guys don't want to give it up because it makes them feel powerful.
Yeah.
But boy, we ever get in trouble. Talk about the anger habit for a minute. What can we do about anger?
Well, first of all, I think it's with any habit we talk about, the very first step is to own it. You've got to acknowledge it.
Right.
It's like, again, I was able to deal with all 12 of these in my life because I admitted they were a problem.
Right.
I admitted that I struggled with them. And then from there, you can begin to take some of these steps to deal with them in your life.
Yeah. And once you deal with them, then I think you're so much more compassionate about people that struggle with them. Now, I'm going to ask you something off topic. I've been associated with a lot of big churches. I can tell you some churches I've been with, and here's what I've heard said about being on staff at that church. It is a relational desert, they would say. If you're looking for a relationship, don't look for it there. And boy, I'll tell you, I am so impressed with how healthy that Northview is. You have some rules for Northview that I think ought to be in everybody's back pocket, like say it in the room.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean?
Well, just that. I mean, the old water cooler thing where people are, they're in a meeting and they don't speak up, but then when they get to the water cooler, they're talking with their
Right.
friends about how they didn't like this or how they didn't like that. And we've just tried to get the staff especially to understand it's like if we can't be open and honest with each other, it's going to cripple us. It's going to keep us from God's best or from what he wants to do with the church. So.
And what I love, that the culture is so healthy and everybody's so big on that principle. When somebody says something at the water cooler, I've known people that have said, hey, wait a second, I think that's a say it in the room thing.
Yeah.
We ought to deal with that
I've had that
next
happen
week.
too.
Yeah,
I've had
really,
people say, why not just bring it up in the meeting?
Yeah.
They'll be okay with that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we've got to let it be okay.
There you
which
go.
is hard sometimes.
Right. Well, a lot of people that run a big church, and we're in the top 20 largest churches, they don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear anything negative. They can't. They're fragile egos. I mean, they built a big church, but they can't. But you're really willing for people to say the things that are uncomfortable, and you deal with it. But anyway, this is a healthy church because people have struggles, and it's okay to struggle. You implemented recovery groups here because, you had recovery groups at the church you were before.
I did.
Right.
I did. I've been involved with recovery and support groups since I went into the ministry.
Yeah.
Because I really believe in the importance of it, not just in for those that are struggling with, say, alcohol or drugs or something like that, but again, every aspect of our life, we need to come alongside each other. And so, I've done probably 4 times since I've been a senior pastor, I've preached the 12 steps. And the reason is because not only is that helpful for those that are in serious addiction, but it's helpful for all of us because we struggle with habits.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I love hearing that because, as I've said for many years, that really the 12 steps, it's a 12-point sermon.
Yes.
It's not just 3 or 4. It's a 12-point sermon, and it stood the test of time.
Exactly.
And, if you don't like them, at least study them. Because a lot of people say they don't like the 12 steps. They don't even know what they are. But every one of them is a biblical principle.
Yeah.
And, when people say to me, I don't like the steps, I say, well, what part don't you like? Surrendering your life to God, making amends for the things that you've done. It's really kind of hard to find something not to like. Okay, so also, a big topic in your book, Creatures of Habit, is a tough one for anybody to address if they have it. It's the pride habit. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, first I would say is that so many times people think of pride as an attitude, but it's not an attitude, it's a habit.
It's what you do.
Yeah. And just as humility is not an attitude, it's a habit.
Right.
It's what we create by doing it over and over again.
What is a prideful action that people, you say, well, if you do this, you probably are dealing with some pride there?
Well, again, when it's all about me.
Yeah.
When it's all about my wants, my desires, my needs, when everything always comes back to me, whether it's with my family or whether it's at work or just in life, if it always comes back to me, then you've created a habit of pride in your life.
Yeah. Every time, my mom used to always say, well, pride comes before a fall. And that was good for her to say it because every time I've started to be prideful about something, then I just think, I'm the most fortunate person in the world that I was able to be part of that or experience that. And I know people that really believe they're on top of the world because of them. Not because they had the right idea at the right time in the right setting and that same idea might have failed at another time, but they really believe they have everything they need. It's hard to find a place for God if you have that kind of pride.
Somebody said pride is the disease that makes everybody sick but yourself.
There you go.
And, there's really a lot of truth in that.
I agree. All right, we're going to take a break. And if maybe you're making everybody sick around you, the only thing these sick people have in common is you, boy, that would be a sad thing. But here's the key. We all have the ability to turn it around with one little step of surrender, willingness to humble ourselves before God and for other people and say, hey, I need to get better. At the end of the program, I'll talk to you about some restitution things. But right now, we'll take a break and then we'll come back for more of Steve Poe.
It's hard to find a trusted friend when you're in crisis, someone who's been there and understands. but who also has the training and skill to give you practical help. Family, friends, and churches want to help, but often they're not equipped to care for those dealing with problems like addiction and pornography, infidelity, anger, depression. New Life Ministries is here to provide help and hope in life's hardest places. We're not focused on making people feel better. We're focused on helping people do the work that will help them be better. At New Life, we have resources available to help you, like books, DVDs, CDs, workshops, and our network of licensed counselors. If you need help, call 1-800-NEW-LIFE and begin your new life today.
Welcome back to Life Recovery Today. Steve Arterburn here with Steve Poe. Brand new book, Creatures of Habit, Breaking the Habits, Holding You Back from God's Best. Now, Steve would tell you this, you said it before. I was in the midst of listening to this series, and I said to you, Steve, you have to turn this into a book. It's just too good. Absolutely. Then I think I might have said something like, if you don't, I'm going to rip off the ideas and do it myself. But it really turned out to be a really great book.
Thank you.
Now, you weren't always an author. You weren't always a pastor. You were a business guy.
I was.
And you had restaurants, or what all
I
did
had
you
several
do?
things. I had a radio station I owned, and I
wow.
owned 3 restaurants and a financial planning firm. And I was an entrepreneur, but I was basically running from God.
Yeah, okay. So how does a guy, and I know God does different things in different ways, but in your case, how did you know business isn't it long term? I need to get into ministry. How'd that happen?
Well, I felt called in the ministry when I was a teenager, but I didn't want to go into ministry. I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
That's what my dream was. And so I tried to bargain with God, and I opened my first business, and after 6 months I was bored with it, and so I changed fields and opened up another business, put a manager over here, opened up something else. And after 6 months, I was bored with that. And so people thought I was diversifying, but in reality, I was just running from God. And so finally, after a series of events, it's kind of a long story, but I was in business for 10 years, and they just kept growing and kept multiplying. But God got my attention. And I decided I would go into ministry. And once I went into ministry, Steve, I always wondered why I ever ran from it, because it was the first time in my life I felt satisfaction. I didn't want to do anything else. It was my sweet spot. And so I don't know why I ran from everything else, but I did for many years.
Well, I'm glad you stopped running, because it certainly has impacted my life to be in that sanctuary there at Northview and just hear the teaching that you do week after week. I don't know how you do it. I have to come up with a sermon every 5 months or so, but it really is consistent teaching. And as you know, a lot of folks have some soft theology in this day and age. And when I was in Washington, D.C., I was doing a pastor's appreciation luncheon. And I asked the guy in charge, I said, tell me like a problem I could address that these guys are going through. And he said, well, the biggest problem is these pastors don't want to offend anybody and have them go away, so they don't want to address some of the controversial problems. Our church has grown, and you've hit them head on. I remember I did a thing on abortion. Dave Stoop did the message on addiction, his son heroin addict. And you did a thing on same-sex relationship, and it was one of the best anything I've ever seen. Having 2 brothers that were gay, I mean, I've seen a few things on it, but that was so great.
Thank you.
How do you do that while other people are saying, I'm not going to address the tough stuff? You do that. How do you do it and grow while you're doing it when other people think it runs people off?
Well, I believe the opposite. I believe that the unchurched are saying, I don't care what you believe, I just want to know what you believe.
Yeah.
And so I think that when we dance around the topic, I think the unchurched world can see right through it and they go away. But even if it's offensive to them, they want to hear what you believe. They want to know what you believe. And so I think you have to just tell the truth. Yeah. You have to give them Scripture. You have to give them Bible. And they come up and confront me. They'll push back, right. And that's okay. I'm all right with that. Yeah. And but I think in the long run, that's what most people want to hear.
Yeah. I want to mention one other thing about the church. Here you are. You address trouble. You've got a book on unpleasant habits that people have. You were a successful businessman. Yet, our church, we have a thing called miracle prayer. Mm-hmm. We absolutely believe in the supernatural God and what can happen there. And it's so meaningful to me to be part of that and have people come up. And then you hear that actually miracles do. They really do. So if somebody were to purchase a copy of Creatures of Habit, what is it that you would want to happen when they read this, your first and hopefully not your last book? What is your dream there?
I guess, Steve, again, all 12 of these topics are ones I've struggled with, some more than others. Workaholism probably was the one that was the most serious for me, that I had to literally take the steps myself and work through it, and I have to keep coming back to it because I struggle with it. And so I guess what I would hope is that somebody would take a look at these chapters and find out, okay, which chapter do I struggle with the most? And you may have to read that chapter several times and keep coming back and working the steps. But that you would at least at the end of a year say, you know what, I've dealt with this habit in my life, I've dealt with this addiction in my life, and I feel like I'm in a better place now.
Well, you have a path too. I mean, if you got this, here's the path out of it. It's not just feel bad, get better. You've got some really great steps. Now, shifting again, my wife and I, we have dinner with a lot of people. We absolutely love your wife, Sandy. She is delightful. She is free. She's funny. She says some of the most irreverent things sometimes. Love that. So I'm just going to ask you, tell me something that you think is important that you guys would have such a great relationship together. Because I guarantee you, if you didn't, your wife would have told my wife. My wife hears all the the back stuff. But what do you think is something that leads to that relationship? Because being a pastor's wife's tough.
Well, again, I come back to that workaholism is a habit that I struggle with, and so because of it, I had to years ago say, all right, Friday is my day off, and Friday's not my day; it's your day. And so we always spend Fridays together. We try to find things that we like to do. We love to do movies. We love to play pickleball. We love to travel. So we found the things that we have most in common, and we focus on those things. And so, and then we get away and realize that's also a time of building a marriage as well.
So she's a priority. You've allocated time. And I think that's got to be important. And then you have these great kids, and they're leaders too. Wish we had more time. It goes quickly. Here's the book. It's Creatures of Habit. Now here's what I want you to do. If you want a copy of this, well, all you have to do, you'll see the email address, you'll see the phone number at the end. Let me know, and I'll buy it and I'll send it to you, okay? Because I want you to have this. Because there are a lot of people that are walking around with lust, pride, anger, all these things. You don't have to. You can be free. And this is a wonderful book from a wonderful man that I admire. I'll be back in just a second, and I'll finish up with some thoughts about restitution.
Life recovery isn't just about making the courageous choice to give up an addiction or dependency. It's a journey towards health, wholeness, and becoming your very best you. If you need resources to help you in your journey, we can help. There are many life recovery resources that you can do on your own, with a group, or with your church. We have Bibles, workbooks, and devotionals that you can use to work your recovery right where you are. That's the beauty of life recovery. To learn more or to get the Life Recovery Bible or any other life recovery resource, visit liferecoverytoday.net or call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE. 1-800-NEW-LIFE.
One of the great leadership principles, one of the great servanthood principles all in one is a principle called restitution. It's making amends where we've messed up. Now, many of you have heard the story I've told about me going off one summer working in a clothing store. I was their best salesman. They couldn't pay me enough, so I compensated myself and I stole about $1,000 worth of clothes. Horrible thing. Well, years later, I decided that I'm going to make restitution and I'm going to make amends for things that I had done wrong years later. So I just thought, well, that guy doesn't need any money and that was a little thing and I didn't do anything. Well, 10 years after all those years, I'm still thinking that's not that big a deal. And then I'm thinking, if that's not such a big deal, why are you still thinking about that $1,000? So I counted up interest. I figured it up. And there was a time, now interest rates for home mortgages are like 1 or 2%. Well, there was a time they were 18%. So I had to figure all these rates. I ended up sending a check to this guy for $6,000 so that I could have this. And here's the gift of restitution. So I could experience closure. And also that maybe there'd be a message in that restitution. Well, this guy owned a big department store and he wrote me a letter back after he got my check and he said, I just about given up on humanity. When you own things, everybody wants something from you, but here you gave something back to me. He said, I can't thank you enough. I think making restitution is one of the toughest things ever, but I think it's one of the most rewarding things that you can possibly do. In Numbers, it says, hey, confess your sins, make restitution, and while you're at it, add on about 20% to that. I think that extra 20% is just something that increases your blessing by about 20%. Amends, restitution, they're great recovery principles, but they're great life principles. And sometimes you need to go beyond just saying, I'm really sorry, I really regret that. Sometimes you need to ask, what could I do to make it right? And maybe you know what to do, and as tough as it is, maybe you'll just do it anyway. If you need some help, we're always available at 1-800-NEW-LIFE. If you need a Life Recovery Bible, I'll get you one. You call. And don't forget, you ask for this wonderful Creatures of Habit book. I'll buy it and I'll send it to you. And then if you don't like it, I'll give you your money back. How's that? See you next time right here on Life Recovery Today.
Thanks for joining us for Life Recovery Today with Stephen Arterburn. We hope this program has helped you integrate God's truth and wisdom into your recovery journey. This program is brought to you by New Life Ministries, and it's your support that keeps this program on the air. When you contact us for any reason, be sure to let us know that you'll watch on NRB. Call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE or go to liferecoverytoday.net. Please join us again next week for more Life Recovery Today.